My name is Charles Harrell with the Veterans History Project. Today I'm in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, interviewing Mr. Edward George. It is December 27, 2007. For the record, Mr. George, would you state your full name?
Edward Joseph George.
And what is your current address?
It's 867 Libby's Ridge Road, Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, 25411.
And when were you born?
March 28, 1925.
And where were you born?
Brockdon, Massachusetts.
During World War II, were you in the U.S. Army?
I was.
Were you drafted?
I was drafted, yes.
Was that in early 1943?
It was indeed.
And when did they release you?
February 1946.
What was your highest rank?
It was private. Permanent rank was private.
What company were you with?
I was with the Company D, the 515th Parachute Infantry Regiment.
And was that with the 13th Airborne Division?
13th Airborne Division, that's right.
Did you fight in any other war besides World War II?
No, I did not.
Where were you stationed?
I was stationed, we got our basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia. And then we went up to two different camps in North Carolina. And then when we shipped overseas, we first went into a place called Camp Lucky Strike. I don't know whether you've heard of it. It was rainy, frigid, cold. It was awful. And from there we went to a couple of different ones, but the longest one we were in was a place called in Arxea, France.
Arxea?
Auxerre, Arxea. And we were stationed in a former French Army caserne. They had a four-story choreographed ground. It was very comfortable.
Let me talk a little bit before we get into your wartime experience about growing up. You were born in 1925 in Massachusetts.
I was.
Was your family from Massachusetts also?
No, my family was mostly from Lebanon. My father's side was from Lebanon. And so I was out of the first generation of Lebanon American born there.
What was your dad's name?
My mother was Lithuanian.
What was your dad's name?
He was called Joseph George.
And your mom?
My mom was Mary. They wanted a name, he cheated, but it had already been taken. No, I used to joke about the fact that this Lebanese guy marrying a Lithuanian girl, it could only happen in Cairo or the United States of America. It's so unlikely.
Did they meet here in the States?
They did.
When did they get married?
Oh, I don't know the date, but she was only about 15 years old.
Were you the first child?
No, I was the third. But I was the first boy, which was wonderful. I was spoiled rotten. I had all the three uncles, and grandmother was still alive. Well, actually, she was the matriarch of the family. And a sister, and I was spoiled. It was wonderful.
So did your parents come over here when they were children?
No. My mother was born here. My father came over here. And that was a great story.
Go ahead.
My grandmother was a little lady, but she had to be strong. Her husband died. My grandfather died in Lebanon. He was fairly well off there. Apparently he had a number of sheep or goats or something. However, they counted wealth there. She then, when at that time there, the women had almost no power at all, no control over money. Her brother-in-law sort of took command of it, and she felt she was not getting her fair share and was hurting the kids. By this time she had 3 children, and one with a babe in arms. No, 4 children. 4 children. Anyway, she decided to get letters from America, to go to America, with the golden area. So all by herself, this woman. Somehow got enough money to buy tickets and so forth.
What was her name?
It was ACF. Sidlachwi. That really means grandmother, though, Sitlahui.
Okay.
So I can't, that's what you always called her. I cannot remember her original one. She was remarkable. She looked like a postcard grandmother, but she was tough. She was tough. She came over. She left two of the kids behind, took my father, who was the oldest son, my aunt, and the babe in arms, that was my youngest uncle, walked down this damn mountain. You ought to see it. You know, they held off the Roman army in AD 64. And you see how easy it was to do it. This place was made for ambush. Narrow little roads and mountains, sheer drops and so forth like that. But anyway, she walked there to Beirut and somehow got to America. That's a wonderful story about America. You know, they were so grateful for their experience in America. She arrived in Providence, Rhode Island, which was a big port at that time, had an address for her friend in Brockdon, Massachusetts. And she doesn't speak any English, and she's looking around, obviously needing help. And this mature, I don't know how old they were, but they were mature American couple, English speaking. And she's at the train station now. They stop to help her, and she points at the car so they know that she wants to go there. They bought her the tickets, put her on the train, got her off at Brockton, hired a cab for her, said, take this woman to this address, you know. Got back in the train, and my grandmother and my aunts and my uncle lived to be great because they never knew the names of those people. But they were still so grateful for them after all those years.
Did your grandma tell you this story?
Yeah. Yeah, and my aunt, they were the sort of, and then she went with the friend she was staying with. Not the great story how we got the name George. You know, George was sort of a given name. She's asking her friend, how do you make money in America? You know, as a woman. You know, and her friend said, oh, Mary, you buy needles and thread and thimbles and anything you can carry. You go door to door, and you knock on the door, and you say, buy my needle and my thread. And you must take a nice simple name, something English, that sounds very English. And my grandmother apparently said, like what? And her friend said, no, Mary George. She said, okay, I'm Mary George. She didn't work on variations for that theme. She just took that name, so she would go up there. And that woman sold enough of those damn things so she could buy a store, you know. And then they bought this 3-decker tenement over here. No, they bought the little house that I was born in, right behind the store. And then the 3-decker over there. And it was ordained that the youngest son was going to become a doctor, whether he wanted to or not, whether he was capable or not. So I remember waking up, say, late, or 3 o'clock in the morning or something, see my uncle bent over his books, you know, drawing bones and nerves, things like that. He was a good doctor. General practitioner, a good doctor. Loved and all that sort of stuff.
And this was your father's mother?
This is my father's mother, that's right. And my other grandmother, I didn't see too much. They were up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, on the other side of Boston. So we didn't see them. And then there was an entirely different thing. We had the hot-blooded Lebanese types, you know. And this is a very dynamic family. You know, for example, we were born I was raised in the Depression, primarily. But I never knew we were poor, because we always had enough food on the table. I have memories, you know, of folding magazines and pages and papers into the soles of my feet, because the soles had holes in them, you know. But I never felt poor. Everyone around us was doing this, you know. And there was so much vitality here. No one was, I don't remember anyone saying, poor me, poor me. It was just vitality and the belief in the promise of America. So my uncles and my father, they would do anything that came along. Carpentry, cement work, drive a taxi. And one uncle became a boxer, pretty good one too. Now these men came up to my shoulder, they might have been 5'8" or something. Powerful. You can't imagine the strength they had in them. And this boxer, this little uncle of mine, he was a slender guy. And people used to stop me on the street to say, Eddie, I never saw anybody hit a man so hard in my life as your Uncle Johnny. You know, they were legendary. So it was great. But anyway, they had this. Then we would go up to Brockdon occasionally. To Lawrence, Massachusetts. And this was the Lithuanian side. And her grandmother, they spoke very little English. But her grandmother with jet black hair. I've often wondered whether she was part Laplander, you know, or something. Had sort of, you know, all the slanted eyes and so forth. And all this love. You know. And my grandfather, who used to drink a little bit too much, would play the accordion, you know. So in some ways, it was an idyllic. I saw all these really striking figures in my life. I had a uncle on my mother's side who could play instruments. I mean, he'd sit down and start picking out tunes, and pretty soon he'd be putting chords together and he'd be playing it. He was a fabulous harmonica player. Anything he could do. Anything. My mother had that same gift, but for languages. She taught herself Arabic. You know, I asked her, I said, why did you do that, Mom? She said, because I knew they, meaning the rest of the family, were talking about me, and I had to know what they were saying. So,
your dad knew how to speak Arabic?
Oh yeah, that was his native tongue. So,
did your grandmother on your dad's side, did she speak English?
No, a little bit, very little.
Just enough to make all that money.
Yeah, and she was, as I say, she was a worker. Well, they all were. And you know, like some people, they're not going to be defeated by anything. You know, that somehow they're going to meet these. For example, I didn't know I was in the Depression, that people were out of work and all that stuff, because they were always bringing home money. But I can also remember, apart from the magazine pages and the shoes, the newspaper thing, you know, to keep the rain down. We lived on the street, Elliott Street, great street to grow up in, because here were all these people, and they were Irish and Greek and Italian and Lebanese, and they all had just about the kids the same age. You wanted a game, you stepped out there and you shouted. Suddenly, whew, there's enough for a baseball team or two teams, you know. And the street was our playground, you know. But at that time, everybody was busy. They were going their way. But where I would go down with my older sisters, and this little wagon we put, to the freight yard. The freight yard was right on the other side of the other houses across the street. And it was a great, mysterious place. And we'd go down there and we'd pick up coal along the side of the thing, you know, come back with a bag of that, a bushel bag. And that's how we heated ourselves through the winter. And you got to the point where you could tell the clinkers you were not, you could remember the clinkers very bad, because they wouldn't burn. That's why they was thrown off the drain. You know, that old gag about making faces at the engineer. Well, they knew what you're doing. They'd throw as much coal as they could if they went by, you know, so you'd have something to pick up.
So Brockdon is a railroad town also?
It was, yeah. In that town, and where we were, our house was. Every year they would have the Brockdon Fair. And you'd hear somewhere around 2, 3 in the morning. You know, I'd wake up, and I would hear these engines go, and then it'd send off, you could see they'd send off a car, a freight car, or a circus car. It would run down all these roads. They'd be pushing little levers and so forth to get him in certain spots, you know. So all night long you'd hear this clank and bang and boom and bang. And you knew something wonderful was going to happen soon. But that was very exciting. It was a great place to grow up in.
Did you have electric in that town?
Yeah, we had electric. I think we didn't have a bathroom. I think we had an outhouse at that time in the 20s. And then somewhere along shortly after, they managed to put a commode toilet in the basement, which was a spooky place, you know, because it had cobwebs and so forth, and the dirt floor, and the furnace. So you'd always announce it, oh, I'm going down there now. If I'm not back in so many minutes, the goblin's got me. That sort of thing, you know.
Had that house been around for a long time before your parents?
I think it had, yeah. And it would amaze me. I've gone back there and I said, is it possible that house is so small?
It's still
All
there?
those people that lived there, you know.
It's still there?
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah, that was good.
I guess neighborhood has changed a fair amount.
The neighborhood has changed, but at least the people seem to be, I think they're all homeowners and they're proud of their homes. But you go up to Main Street in Brockdon, and it's sad. You know, there's just windows boarded up and this sort of stuff. Then I have these great memories of you know, like getting a library card. What a thrill that was. Going down there with my older sister, you know, and realize I was 6 or 7 or something like that. And they would go, and I could go there, and they assured me I could go there and take out a book all by myself. And in those days, I could walk from mine. That might have been 3 or 4 miles, you know. And I could walk from there down to the library. No one would ever be afraid that something bad or untoward was going to happen to me, you know. You don't get that now. But I said, what a gift that was.
Tell me about your sisters.
My sisters? Well, Mildred, she was the oldest, then Margaret. Mildred was very bright and had a beautiful face, but was overweight. And she was a very generous, loving person. And as I say, I was always in her shadow, you know. Oh, you must be Mildred's brother. There's one of the teachers, they grabbed me by the cheek and shaking like crazy. Mildred was a wonderful student. I expect as much from you, you know. So I was sort of trapped into working hard. Margaret was loving, but not too bright. But she was a worker, and God, I mean, she's so proud when the war came and she got a job at the shipyard. You know, she was the quintessential Rosie derivative. Then there was a pause. There was a pause of maybe 4 years, and then my sister Babe came along. We called her Babe because they named her after my aunt, who everyone called Sadie. Now, originally, in Lebanon, the birth name had probably been pronounced Sada, which is a nice, exotic sound to it. But Sadie, that sounded a little bit rough. So Sadie hated that. But we started calling her Baby Sadie, you know, to distinguish her. And then pretty soon we dropped the Sadie, it became Babe, you know, to the day she died, hey, Babe. And then, the year after that, Carol, another sister came in. And then a brother, and she was right toward the end, another brother whom I hardly know. There'd be a gap between my second brother and me, maybe of 12 years or so. Could have been that.
So they grew up in a different generation.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was the same. In fact, you raised an interesting point. Because when I would go home for special occasions, etc., and the whole family, all the outlying family, the uncles, cousins, all that, would be some function, some gathering, and then of course they would have to have a picture. And every year there would get more and more people stuffing in there. Invariably, I would be seated next to the older ones, and you could almost tell that I looked more like I was from their generation than my own, the theoretical one, you know. Anyway.
Can you recall your first meal that your mother made?
No, I cannot.
No. Was she a good cook?
Hmm? Well, yeah. In a way, why would I have to compare it? But, you know, nothing. She was a good cook, because she could cook Arabic. She'd learn how to do that. And then but I don't remember anything. It was peculiarly Lithuanian, say. So mostly it was down with the beef, fish, and meat, and potatoes, and things like that. But again, there was nothing fancy about that. The thing that she made, when you say good cook, her specialty was baked cheese. You know, all those little layers of things, baked cheese. And for me, she made the best baked beans in the world, the Boston baked beans. They were wonderful. In fact, it still becomes a joke. When I visit my sister, they'll go out of their way to heat up a can of beans.
You mentioned that you had a large family, and they seemed to all get along pretty well.
Yes, I would say that. But you know, yes, we get along well. There was much love. I tell you, as we got older, and we got the childish jockeying out of the way and so forth, you know. And then when I would go home on leave, this is from my job or something, I'd get back from Asia and go back there from, it was hysterical. We enjoyed each other so much, and this was, people used to come, other cousins, distant cousins. They'd hear I was home and they knew there was going to be a gathering, you know, of all these strange types. And they'd come there and there'd be nothing but laughter at the strange thing that was said. Yeah, we get along well.
Some families are very close knit, and others are more distant.
Oh, that's true. But mine was close knit, and very. There was an emotional aspect to it, you know, and so that one of the problems I when I grow up, and I'm used to this background. People rarely shook hands; they would embrace, you know, and I grew up with men kissing men. My godfather, that's kind of my memory of him. He's got this fedora hat on, always needs to shave. He's got a stub of a cigar in his mouth, you know. And he said, "Let's have," and he grabbed me and he pressed that, all those stubble into my shirt and come away bleeding. You know, all the things so sensitive. But he's a wonderful man. Wonderful.
Did your parents ever talk to you about politics of the 30s?
Oh, God, I can't say they did. If they did, no, we would more it was work and getting by and what was happening, the thing that had to be done. You know, my father would have 2 jobs, you know, and then he'd come home, and my mother would be saving all the punishment for him. You know, wait till your father comes home. You know, so this poor man would come in, dead tired, he probably just wanted coffee and relax. Do you know what Eddie did today? Then he'd start to punish. He knew he had to punish me, so he'd start to punish me. He'd say, "Don't hit this boy." She would leave there and protect me. He didn't have a chance, you know, to be loved. No. Looking back, it was, I feel fortunate.
As a kid, would you consider yourself a shy kid or more outgoing?
I was more outgoing. Loud.
Loud?
Loud, yeah, racing up and down the street, calling the people. But that was, it was the thing about that period. When I say I didn't realize we were in a depression or that we were poor. I didn't realize that there were classes, economic classes. I grew up in this street, Elliott Street. I was born in that house, you know, 86 Elliott Street. I went off to the Army from 86 Elliott Street, you know. Came back from 86 Elliott Street. My mother died there many years later. So this was my world, was Elliott Street, you know. Maine was up there at a cavalry cemetery, you know, maybe a mile or 2 long, you know. And that was our playground. That was everything.
Can you tell me about your schooling that you went through?
Essentially, well, the public schools, we had there was a 4-room elementary school. What the hell was the name? I can't remember the name of that. And from there we had to go to the Winthrop School for 4 years. No. We went from the 4 years to that other school, Winthrop School, and through to junior high, you know, the first year. And then we went down to the main high school for the last 3 years.
Is there any particular teacher that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, there's Mrs. Bloom, I think her name, Bloom or Bloomberg. And I must have been in the 8th grade or something. Well, she was a very good-looking woman. Very good-looking. And nice body. I mean, I'm at that age when I'm aware of breasts and that sort of stuff. And this woman was so bright and tolerant, you know. And I remember I was going through this phase that I still like poetry. But my poetry at that time was, and there on the floor lay Dangerous Dan McGrew, this sort of stuff, you know, and Kipling. And I'd send away for this little magazine, you know, they'd come in almost plain paper and it just nothing but poems, see. But then apparently there's also pornography would come in those things too. So I had this in my back pocket. At one time, she was our English teacher. And she'd given us an assignment. I was bent over writing this when I suddenly felt this thing out of my back pocket. And I looked around, startled, thinking it was the guy behind me, you know, giving me a hard time. I saw the teacher. And she said, "Oh, I won't tell anyone." She thought it was pornography, I guess. Then she read it, and it was this stuff from Rudyard Kipling and Jack and Robert Service and so forth. And it would just stun the hell out of her. But I became her favorite after that. Yeah, she was something. And there's one of the wonderful stories. I had a friend, he was a couple of years older than I, Bucko. Tall, handsome son of a gun. He went into the service, into the 101st Airborne, dropped on D-Day and a couple of other places, And Bucko was a great-looking guy, and well-built, and totally confident. Not arrogant, just totally confident of himself. Well, after I got my wings, following in his footsteps, I had to, of course, show off. So I went back to the high school, and there was one teacher we both had. I can't remember her name now, but she was older. She was the prototypical teacher, the spinster at that time, with glasses and gray hair and so forth. So, and of course I was telling him about my experience, etc. And then I mentioned Bucko, that he had been in the 101st Airborne. And this wonderful expression crossed her face, a little smile, and she said, Bucko, he moved like a cat. My God, I said, this was a woman this woman had feelings, It was wonderful. But that was Bucko. So he was part of the reason, I guess, I went into the...
You mentioned that you did not know that there was a Great Depression.
No.
But, Franklin Roosevelt was elected president in 1933 to become the fixer of the Great Depression through his New Deal stuff. Did you know anybody who was involved with the New Deal thing?
Oh, God, my whole family. But not on a political basis, getting the jobs on it. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned Roosevelt, because I saw him, when he, at the Brockdon Fair, and there was a big rally down, maybe the 4th of July or something. And we had this big dirt track, and he came roaring in his convertible, waving that wonderful cigar. And I remember we looked at him he was a god to us.
You were a kid at this time.
That's right, yeah. And it ended into my family. I mean, they were solid Democrats. That's where you went for help and, and assistance. And that's in the old days when they'd pass out, when people would eat, they'd pass out coal or turkeys or things like that at special occasions, I don't know if they still do it. At least I don't hear much of it. We had one guy up here who did it. He's a good man, but unfortunately he died too young.
Did you listen to radio much?
Yeah, that's all we had. Had this wonderful thing called Atwater Kent. I don't know if you're sure of it. With the 2-piece thing. Had this metal box like so. And sitting on top was a huge microphone-like thing. There was a speaker. Atwater Kent. Yeah, we did.
What did you listen to?
Well, Amos and Auntie for one thing. Mostly the comedies, really the news for us. In fact, I remember walking up the street in the summer, and one of the older Lebanese guys, Saif, he said, come up here, he said. Amos and Auntie are on, he said, they're so funny, somebody sit down there with a grape arbor, And he'd laugh. I don't know how he gets he understood everything that was going on, but he thought that was one of the funniest things in the world. And I'm so glad I shared it with him,
Did you go to the movies?
Oh, God, yes. Saturday matinees. Sometimes it says my mother would pack a big bag, and my 2 sisters and I, and they'd take me to it, and we'd sit through, baby. Well, they had coming attractions and news of the week. That we got the news there at the war, but that was a bit mostly of the pre-war stuff, and then two features, and sometimes we'd stay through them. And that's how I got my first pair of roller skates. You'd go there. As an inducement, they would give you a piece of a roller skate every time you'd go there. You buy a ticket, and they'd give you a wheel here. It took a long time to get there. And the last thing they gave you was the key. So you could sort of screw them onto your feet and not kill yourself. But no, the movies were very important. In fact, I've thought about it a lot because I'm still a movie buff. But they were my window on the world. and that the world they showed was so different than what I saw around me. I just never thought I would enter it, you know.
The world you saw around you was really an immigrant neighborhood. Is that
Yeah,
true?
it was. It was.
Did you have any black people in your town?
One. And they lived off what we call Emmett Street. And this man, the father, was blind. I met him a couple of times. We talked. He was a fighter. He was a prize fighter, and that's how he was blinded in that thing. The Simmons. And they would walk by our house. Everybody walked at that house. You walk by the house to go to work, you know, downtown. But, and it must say, you know, it's funny. I really grew up without any biases about people or races and things like that. And I don't know. I didn't realize it was in some ways exceptional until I left Brockdon. Went into the service and suddenly saw, you know, colored only and this all this stuff down the south. Shocked the hell out of me. And, but in that case there, I remember the night before I went into the service, there was a little party, you know, and people would come, older people, there weren't that many young people around, and they'd all give me $5 or $1 or something like that, you know, so I could go off with some money in my pocket. And then somebody said, Eddie, I forget her name, but Simmons, she said, she's out there, she wants to see you. So I walk out, she's sitting on the sidewalk, and she's lovely, and said, Eddie, I want you to have this, and she gave me $5. I said, Jesus, thank you. I said, come on in with it, we got no sodas and things like that to eat. No, she wouldn't come in. Now, I don't know whether she felt some pressure not to go that she wouldn't be wanted, but I couldn't get her in there, but I wanted her in there. And I think that group would have accepted it, you know. Everybody needed help in one way or the other. Everybody needed each other. My mother, I told you, had a wonderful gift of languages. She had a great ear. And that's one of the things I regret in my lifetime. I did not get her ear for languages or my uncle's talent for musical instruments. I've really been a much more complete and happier man, you know. So when she'd go, we used to wait for her. So occasionally she and my father would go out for dinner at somebody's home, you know. And as you say, they were all immigrants, all speaking with a different accent. So we kids would wait for them to come home and then ask my mother about it. My mother would start to tell, and she also had a great memory, you know, or maybe her imagination. But she would tell you about the different characters. Each one she would drop into their accent. And you knew, and she would become that person. It was amazing, you know. We just loved it. So it was an immigrant in, but it was the kind of situation, for example, my kids were grown up overseas in Japan, you know, like 8 years. I was there, and one child was born there, and so forth. I used to regret the fact that they didn't have this history that I had in some ways. Because up and down that street of that street, everybody knew me. Everybody felt, all the adults felt, that I was their concern. If I screwed up, they felt free to punish me. If I told my father, he would punish me. So you get to the point I didn't do that anymore. Once was enough for the same thing. But out of that thing, I think, came a great sense of security that stood me well when I wandered down strange cities in Asia, you know.
As a kid, did you join the Boy Scouts?
No. None of those things. The things that, and I don't know whether they were too expensive for or what, you know. And no one in my neighborhood did. No one that I know of. There was no outreach program, so we might have heard of Boy Scouts, but there was something else. Just like eventually going to high school and thinking that there's a certain bunch of kids who have their own automobiles. Wow, you know. And they still had horse-drawn cars, you know. So sometimes I would hitch a ride with I'd be this old fruit peddler, you know, and his horse. And we'd go trotting up the street to the high school. He'd drop me off. Could pick me up there. And they got that was about 4 miles too, you know. We used to walk it all the time. So which I don't know if anyone has studied the impact of the Depression on the condition of the soldiers, because it was a tough generation, without ever realizing, without going out and doing reps and things like that. You know.
What was your first memorable job?
Memorable job?
Yeah, the one where you got paid and you made your own money.
Oh well, I know about money. How about milk? I had a job when I was 13 that really was fun. It was the milkman, and he had the last horse-drawn milk cart in Brockdon. You know, it had rubber wheels on it. The horse had rubber thing. So this bucko and I would meet him. Get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We'd meet him at this bakery. Oh God, I can still smell those aromas. They were absolutely wonderful, just to solve you. And so we'd meet there. Then we'd go off on the road. And when I was fascinated by the idea of the horse, but he would also give us 2 quarts of milk and a pint of chocolate, the chocolate I was after. So I would come back with the 2 quarts or something, contribute to the thing. And God, Swiney Swinema, what a name, huh? That was a damn fun guy. You'd take it, go back to the property, you'd have these nudist pictures around like that. We thought it was so daring and so forth. Never made a pass at us, I think. Any of that thing, never. But that route, I was saying, I love the horse.
And you got paid by the milk.
By the milk, that's right.
What was your next memorable job that you can recall?
Let's see, there was in the vegetable department of a big grocery store. Maybe it was part of a chain, but it still was pretty small compared with the one we have there. And I remember the awful, some poor woman came in and asked for a peck of spinach, you know. I don't know how many bags I'd filled up with this thing, and I couldn't get it to a peck. And fortunately, and she stood there and let me do it, you know. And fortunately, the manager, the guy that took care of the vegetable, saved me. He said, "What the hell are you doing?" And she ended up with maybe walk away with 1 bag instead of those 16 that I had out there. But that's when I got to get paid and so forth. In between, one of my uncles had a part in a restaurant, the diner, you know. And he was a partner with this Irish political type, behind the scenes type, Frank Manning, who knew everybody. And this diner, Brockdon was about 40,000, 50,000 people. It had been a very active shoe town. They made shoes. All the factories around there made some part from shoes. And they even had a postage stamp, Brockdon Shoes of the World, you know. No more. After the war, they all went south and the cheap labor and so forth. But in this town, that it got to be that the Colonial Diner was the place to go. After the football games, after the basketball games, after almost any occasion, people would come into this bar. We had a bar, and maybe 10 what do you call it, let's say, booths, 10 booths. Best coffee in town. But when I look back and I realize, that is, other ones would come in, it's that much nicer looking thing. But it was always a diner, you know. That was good. No, I really feel I was fortunate with growing up in that place, but it did not prepare me for the great outside world, the real world. That's where the service came in, you know.
Tell me about the life at the high school. Did you play sports?
Oh, yeah. Football, I was a football star.
Football was your thing?
Yeah. Football and swimming. I was a lousy basketball player, but because I was a football star, they had to take me. They had to put me on the team to keep me in shape. God, that coach resented because I was bad.
Did you have a crowd that you hung out with at the school?
It was a crowd. It would be. There were 3 other guys that we sort of grew up from 12 on, we attached ourselves to each other. And then there, you would mingle with the football groups and so forth, but it wasn't a close knit group. No, not on my part. Not on my part. After, I mean, it was a question of, when I go home, we'd rather have chores or something to do. And that's why you get the first thing of the differences in people and classes and so forth, you know. And that's why I was grateful for football. I wasn't good on at the time, look back at it, because I just loved to play. And I had some skill. And you know, even today it's the same way. If you're an athlete, get some athletic skill, then people want to be with you or see you or do much harm. For example, I was so pleased when in the senior year, I am named the best all around. Now, isn't that a title to go through life with? The best all around. Had to be the football.
As the war started in Europe, we stayed out of it, and Hitler was taking one country after another. Did you have any awareness at that time?
Well, we got the newsreels. That's when they had the newsreels were very big. So we would get that. But as far as touching me, as far as translating it from Europe to my experience, to Elliott Street, have any meaning at all. No, I can't say that it did.
The rise of Hitler and the hatred of the Jews that he so expounded on the radio, did that affect you at that time?
Yeah, I have to say it did not. Because I don't think I was aware of it. I didn't. I'm trying to think. When we went into the service, and they gave you this documentaries on why we fight. Have you ever seen them?
Yeah.
And the happy German people danced on. That is the only time that, well, there were also movies like Watching the Rhine and stuff, things like that. But they didn't show the full horror of them. You know, and I must say, when we were growing up, you were so concerned about your own little world that these other things didn't have any meaning. And I say that it was Elliott Street, and then there was the larger world, which I never wasn't sure that I'd be part of it, you know. So I can't say that I was aware or that I was politically sensitive or, no.
Had you heard about what the Japanese were doing in China?
Perhaps.
But you don't recall.
I don't recall.
And then the Japanese bombed us at Pearl Harbor.
That I heard. I was coming out of the Brockdon Theater. I think it was 3 o'clock or something like that. Yeah, that's when they said that. Yeah, that night, of course, I was, those dirty Japs, that sort of stuff, you know. But I wish I could remember what was playing, but I don't. Yeah.
Now, you were about 16, maybe 15 years old when the attack came on Pearl.
Yeah, I guess it would be.
Did you ever imagine joining the military?
Well, everybody was. It was like electricity. Everybody wanted to be in. I told you we were part of this group. The four of us. 3 of us went into the service. 1 did not. He had asthma, very bad. Bright, amusing. I wish the hell they'd taken him. I think the fact that he didn't go really screwed him over in life. And he ended up, you know, dying an alcoholic and so forth. But he was so bright. So yes, we did feel that surge of patriotism and desire to get into it and so forth.
During the first 6 months of the war, we're losing the war. The Japanese are taking the South Pacific, and the Germans seem unstoppable in Russia, even through Lithuania. Did your mother ever talk about?
If she did, I don't remember it.
Don't remember. Well, we're losing, and the war is going into the dark days. What was your mood?
Oh, I was optimistic. I had every faith in America. You know, that somehow we would come back and we'd get these guys there. I didn't think we were in trouble at all.
Did you, as a kid, before you were drafted, did you participate in any patriotic movement here in the States? Collecting tin or buying bond stamps?
Yeah, we had to do that. We did that. Collecting, you know, bacon grease and things like that.
You did that, bacon grease.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
I've heard about that, but I never met anybody who actually did.
Yeah.
How about buying war bonds? Did you have money?
Nice of you to ask. No, we didn't. We didn't. And I think someone may have given me one for a graduation present or something like that. I really don't know. But no, we didn't buy bonds.
You continued in school.
I continued in school at graduation.
Did the teachers speak about the war situation, like propaganda of any sort?
No, I don't remember that. I remember just concentrating on their studies. The teachers were a different type at that time too, I think, They all seemed to be like part of a cloistered society. Women, older women, I don't remember any married ones, Go away, babe, go away. I don't remember any propaganda lectures or patriotic exhortations or all, nothing like that. Life just seemed to go on.
Did you graduate in 1942?
No, 43.
In 43.
43, yeah. I was 18 in March, so I went in June, I think, or June or February, something like that.
But you had graduated to school before you went in.
I did. So maybe it had to be later that summer. Maybe July or August.
The process of registering for the draft was supposed to happen on your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happened? Did you go down on your birthday?
It probably did. I don't remember that.
Don't remember. When you went to, where did they send you when they called your number up?
They Fort Devens in Massachusetts.
What did they do at Fort Devens that day?
Fort Devens, let's see. Before that, we had to go for a physical.
Where was that?
And I think that was in Boston, somewhere in Boston. So they're coming from all the way from Massachusetts, maybe other parts of New England. And then we went home, and this was a very cursory thing. A lot of you could, walking strong, etc.
Were you categorized right then of what you were? Were you 1A?
1A, high school athlete. I was in great shape. I thought I was until I joined the paratroopers. They brought tears to my eyes.
So you went to Boston for a physical, and then you went back home.
Back home, then some weeks later, there was the thing you called up, and we had to go down to the. We had to go down for a photograph session at our city hall, which is an old building, but had some wonderful murals of the Civil War in it. Really great one. And I've got some pictures of it. Too bad they didn't bring them along at the group, because if you have time, I could find. I think they're probably in the top of the book, or of the graduating class was going in there, because they're such a motley crew. Some little guy sitting there looking so sad, and I'm standing there with a big smile on my face, because a long time ago, my mother, we couldn't afford cameras, growing up. So every once in a while, someone would show up with a camera and take our picture. And my mother would say, "All right, Eddie, smile. If you die tomorrow, we don't want them to think you weren't happy." I've gone through life smiling every time a camera is pointed at me. But that was a wonderful photo. And you see those things.
Did you get a choice on what branch of service to join?
Oh yes, we did. But at the time, I just said Army, Navy, Air Force. So that was my first assignment in for boot. They didn't call it boot, for basic training. Was in Norfolk, Virginia. At I forget the name of the fort, Fort Eustace. And it was an anti-aircraft specialty they had down there. So my first 4, 5, 6 months was spent learning how to do close order drill and fire weapons and that sort of stuff. Was learning how to use the searchlights and things like this. And they told all of us that that the only way I could get out of this outfit was by volunteering for the Air Force or the Airborne. Well, maybe the vision to buckle, I couldn't see myself saying, shining searchlights through this wall, So I volunteered for both of them, Airborne called first. So I went off. I went out to the Airborne. And this is the way life works, right? These guys, whom I hadn't known that, when I first met them in this thing, and we would have formed friendships and so forth, they would beg me not to go to the paratroop. Officers I didn't know would got them, hey kid, don't join the paratroop, they're nothing but a bunch of drunks, he said, you're going to be dead in 6 months, you're hanging in their parachute, you can't fight. By the time they called me for the paratroop, I was scared stiff. And they all my friends would send long faces, they sent me off. And I go down to the Fort Benning and start this thing. I would get letters from I even got my first cable or telegram from my family. Don't do it, Eddie. Don't do it, but of course I was committed. But I really was afraid when I got on that train to go down there. And if I could have done it in a safe face, I probably would have backed out of it. So here were these fellows now in the so-called searchlight brigade and the anti-aircraft stuff. And I'd get these letters from them and say, oh, gee, how's it going, Ed, you poor bastard, we miss you, and all this, very friendly stuff, very friendly stuff. Suddenly, about a month or so after I left, they were all whipped up as replacement for some infantry. I think they were going into D-Day, or maybe it was after D-Day or something. It could have been before D-Day. Then the letters changed. Then they were accused me of knowing this was going to happen, and I took the coward's way out by joining the paratroopers. You really couldn't please them.
So you showed up at basic at Fort Eustace.
At Fort Eustace.
What was your first memory about Fort Eustace? You have one about the first day of your military service? Or the first
all
memory?
jumbled up. Yeah. I think it's the train rides. I used to love trains, because I might have made 1 or 2 trains before in my lifetime, going up to Lawrence, But he would be going from Boston through New York City and Washington, and deeper into these things.
You've never seen it?
Never seen. And sometimes if it's nighttime, you'd hear those crossings in these little sleepy towns. No one up but the guy, the one working for the thing, and the ding, 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 ding. And I couldn't sleep on the train, so I'd just be watching, wondering what kind of life these people lived, So I don't, and a lot of times I'd be so nervous. For example, when I got on, I was very homesick. So I would go to the chapel, which of course was a sort of non-denominational. And it didn't matter that there was no one else there. I said, I just feel better. I would feel closer to home. Because at that time, I think I was much shyer than I was, because I was in this brand new era or environment. And sort of feeling my way around it. It was a wonder, I tell you, World War II for me, over the whole world. That I'm not sure. It fascinates me to wonder what would it have been like before. Because suddenly I was meeting people from all over the States, mostly my age. An old man would be considered 27, 28, And to find out that we had much in common, that we were kids, and we could be frightened, nervous, inept, and unaware of the world, etc. That was a very comforting thing for me, because I felt so inadequate for this larger world, Then so I don't remember my initial things. I'm sure I approached them with some trepidation. But gradually, as you find out that you can field strip a rifle and put it back together again, and you can hit what you're aiming at, and you can do these things, that your confidence started to build up.
And you were physically fit, so
I thought
the
it was.
exercise was no problem.
Yeah. But that wasn't bad.
But then you decided to volunteer. So the volunteering for the Airborne had nothing to do with the money.
No, God, no. It was the glory. It was the adventure. You know?
Had you left a girl behind in Brockton?
It was the other way around. No. No, I know I had a girlfriend, but there was nothing intense or anything like that. We were remarkably innocent in those days. Go away, babe. Yeah, it's a good dog. She actually did it. Now that joining I wanted to get into something glamorous, and that was my idea of glamour with the Airborne. And I must say, I was in there 2 weeks in a training. The training was I'm convinced it was designed to weed out those but the most committed. First one was solely on physical thing, training, exercise. Oh God! And I can remember, we used to have this sawdust pit that you worked in for some reason for doing all push-ups and this stuff, and they had this one exercise, but they'd have you hold your arms out like that, which seemed like a slam, you know, until 15 minutes passed. And I would have fistful of sawdust, fighting the pain and the tears. I didn't want to cry, but they'd be coming out anyway. Jesus Christ, it was awful. And I'd have to be helped into bed. You know, my cot, I was on the upper cot, helped in it and helped out of it. And it was amazing. A lot of people would disappear.
You wouldn't see them walk away?
No, they just, well, you would at one way, but it was happening so fast. And again, I don't have any buddies in this thing.
No buddies.
Yeah, I mean, we're all from different parts of the surface that go in this thing. So, and they would just go back to their old outfits or send them somewhere else. So I was in, that was the first week. And then the second week, they'd start you off with jumping out of towers to get you acclimatized to parachuting, you know. You'd jump off the back of moving trucks and things like that and so forth.
Fully loaded with combat gear?
Well, that was added gradually. First, they want to make sure that you couldn't turn into a bundle, you know, just sort of roll into a fall. Anyway, then they would progress. The last week was 5 jumps. The last one would be a night jump. So I was 2 weeks into this thing when the sergeant comes. He said, "Hey, Ed." No, they didn't. No one ever called you by your first name. It was George. George. He said, "You can leave tomorrow morning." I said, "For where?" He said, "The Air Force wants you." He said, "They have priority over us." And that was the first time I remember saying that. And I said, and all these thoughts going through my mind. And I said, "Do I have to make my decision now? Can I finish this and then go?" He said, "Sure, anytime you want." I know, good. I have to know whether I can really jump out of that airplane. You know?
You hadn't jumped yet?
No, I hadn't jumped yet. So I stayed in. And he goes with them, when you jump, and all along the way, people are dropping out. And then it was interesting, because some was just the physical demands in the first few weeks. Third week would be, you'd get more of the high towers and the different actions. So people would be they'd be more aware. For example, they had a 34-foot tower. They gave you the exit posture, you know, you'd put your hand outside like as though you're in the plane, and you would jump out and you'd turn into this, and you're in a parachute harness, but it's just attached to a big cable. You go whoosh, a couple hundred feet. Well, when you're standing there, you're looking down, and here, at 30 feet, 4 feet is an interesting height, because you're close enough to the ground to see the details, right? And so here are all these others waiting to go up there, they're staring up to you like this, you know, with no expression on their face, but maybe lingering fear, or waiting for your harness to break, which of course is always going through your mind. So some people would freeze in the door; they couldn't do that. Then, by the time they got to the 4th week of the jumping, there was a pretty good chance that everybody was going to do it. But still, you'd find men, and grand-looking men, strong and powerful and brave, on the ground, would suddenly get in front of us, standing in that door, and realized it. And of course, by the way, they told you all the different things that could happen, go wrong, say, in parachuting, so. And realized that their strength, their agility meant nothing. Once they stepped out that airplane, they could go plummeting right down. So they would freeze. And they had a practice which I did not approve even then. If you did not jump, you had to walk. You had to take off your boots, your jump boots, sling your parachute over your back, and march under guard throughout the whole damn camp. It was awful. You'd see good men crying in shame and so forth.
And this was in Benning.
That was the Benning. So that was bad. But what? And the first jump, it was interesting. They used to train you so hard before then, going through all the motions, stand up, hook up, check equipment, this sort of stuff. That by the time your first jump, your body was acting outside your brain. It was already keyed and tuned to this sort of thing. So I found the first jump easy and exciting. Second jump, a little bit more nervous because by this time I've seen what they call streamers, when the chute doesn't fully open, and you descend very fast and rapidly. Then you see what they call the May West. That's when some of the cords leap over and your chute, instead of being one round thing, comes like that. So you might drop this way as air falls through the thing. So by the third jump, you've seen enough of these things, you realize it could happen to you. That was a terrible one. I mean, emotionally. And I was really so pleased when I did it. When I acted. If I was going to quit, that would have been the time. Then the night jump was relatively, it was so dark. So dark, and you step out into the darkness. And you take their word that there's a field below there, that you're going to land in. Anyway, how's it going? How do you see it in your schedule? You have other questions and things to ask?
Keep on talking about your jumping here.
Okay. Right.
You said by the sixth time...
The fifth time, but that was a night jump. And that had its own special pressures, because you can't see faces. You can't see anything. The plane is dark, there's only a lighter darkness outside.
How high were the airplanes when these jumps were happening?
They were usually about 1,200 feet, 12 to 1,300 feet. In combat, they might be under that, 900. And D-Day, some of them were at 700, which doesn't give you much time for your chute to fully open, it was funny. If I hadn't jumped for a number of weeks, I would be very nervous the night before. Very nervous. Mind edgy, thinking of all the horrible things. If I jumped once, 3, 4 times, I loved it. I couldn't wait to get on the plane again, because sometimes they would do that. They'd have extra shoots, extra fights. So you just grab that son of a gun and jump off. Because the feeling was exquisite. You should compare it to an orgasm. You got you're all bunched up in this tight thing. And C-47, there's not much room on the C-47. And you'd be amazed. You get 24 guys in there. They're packed when they get to the clams. And they have to check each other's equipment. And that light turns green. And the jump master says, go. Boy, God, that plane. If you happen to be stuck in the plane for some reason, it's eerie to have it empty so damn fast. But if I were back in the line, it was after a while when you got more self-possession, and you could see out the door, and you could see the parachute and different developments of opening, and there'd be a dip in a line like this, with the chute going off like that, and then fully opening. And when it opened, combined with the propeller wash and the air wash and so forth speed, it was like being on the end of a whip. They used to teach you kept your head down and your elbows in close, and your hands would be over your safety, your reserve chute. And you counted at 3,000, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. If the main chute had not opened by then, you were supposed to pull this one. Fortunately, I never had to do it in an emergency. But so what would you go in there, and it really felt like at the end of a whip, whap, that opening shock. Some people would lose helmets and so forth, and it was but then this would be immediately followed by this blessed silence. You'd be swinging up in the air just like weightless, you know. And you did, the airplane would be a distant murmur getting farther and farther away. And you look around you and there's the sky is dotted with your friends that said, you know. No words, no shouts. It was lovely. Then the problem came when you came in for landing, because you might be going, depending upon the wind, you'd be going 30 miles an hour or more sometimes. and the temptation to climb, I would fight. I'd have to fight. I just want to keep climbing over the parachute until there was no parachute left, rather than just to delay that ground impact, you know.
How about landing on things?
Landing like that?
Well, you have different equipment you're carrying. Were you ever worried about landing on something?
Well, no, because we didn't know enough. And when we went overseas, they were trying to develop a new way of getting the equipment down, the heavy equipment, the heavy machine guns, the mortars and things like that. Before we used to carry them, or no, we didn't carry them, that's right. That's why they were trying to develop this way, where we would carry them. But they would have bomb bays under the C-47s, and there'd be a couple of packets that first go out. The jump master would throw them out first, and then they'd be followed by the stick. But what would happen is that, because they were the first, there'd be this long line of troopers strung across an open field with all our equipment down that end, you know? And usually the Germans knew the attractive field for a drop, so they would have them zeroed in and so forth. It was not a pretty situation. So they tried to develop this system whereby they would put these packs and attach them to your reserve chute. Your reserve chute would still be attached to you. And this thing would be held in place by a belt around the waist with a couple of trip things you could hit to release them. When you jumped out, after you found out that your own chute was open and was going to carry you down safely, then you just take off the belt, hit those trips, and it would drop. And it would be attached to this 25-foot parachute thing, which would pull the ripcord on the reserve chute. And the reserve chute would open up. You would pull the riser and slip to the side, whichever side it was coming up on, away from it. And then when you hit the ground, you just pulled it into you, see. You didn't have to raise your head or anything, you just pulled that thing. Great idea.
Did you do that any?
Yeah, I made a bunch of jumps like that over in France. And that's where, that was probably one of the closer things. The bad things happening, whether you see combat or not, right? So we went, and they were going to have a fairly large jump to test this equipment. Now, I had seen it happen before. Sometimes the chute would, the equipment bag would hit the bottom, pull open the chute, the reserve chute, which wouldn't fully develop. We just ought to lie there and flap around. At which time, you rode it into the ground, and then just before it hit the ground first, you would slide off to its direction. So on this day, lovely June day, and when you're up there, you just want to look around. You never want to land, you know. You just want to hang in there. It's so beautiful. And that happened to my chute. I dropped my bag that I was carrying. It just lay there, just flapping idly back and forth. It looked like it was going nowhere. So I immediately started looking around to see what's happening to the other guys. And while I'm doing this, out of the bottom of my eye, I just see this cloud-like thing slowly rising to envelop me. And I realized it's a chute, you know. So all I could think of, and I can still remember it, oh no, God, not this way. As far as I knew, I was still up 700 feet or 600 feet or something, and I knew this was going to steal all the air from my main chute. So I started to try to pull this thing in. It's like one of those awful dreams, you know. All this nylon, I'm shoving and pulling. I don't know whether I was making progress or not. Still thought I was up there, and suddenly slammed into the ground on my back. Just from this back on up, you know. Drove every bit of air out of my body. I felt like my stomach was in little pieces. And I lay there still covered by this stupid parachute. Hearing other people coming in for landing and shouting, "Get out of the way, I'm coming in, I'm coming in." See, I was hoping someone would notice my plight, but nobody did. And it came at that time, the British had developed a chute, a release thing that it all set it right here, all the straps. And you'd pull this great big cotter pin, and then you'd twist it like that, then you'd tap it. It was lovely. The other way, you might have a hell of a time trying to get out of those, unhook the hooks and all. But this damn thing was centered over where I felt my stomach was broken in little pieces. So I lay there, trying to get up enough air to go, and wondering whether my arms would fall off if I did. But finally, no one was coming. I finally did that. Crawled out. Everybody was racing around doing something else. Someone else had actually broken his back when his chute got caught in his boots. And so no one was aware that I'd even come down hard or anything. You know. Come on, George, get your ass over here, and we got work to do. But I never took my eye off that chute afterwards, though.
Did you see anybody's chute not open?
I saw streamers, what they call streamers, but I never saw one.
Was the streamer pretty much you were going to die when you hit?
Yeah, if you didn't open that reserve thing, but you just came down. Sometimes the cords would wrap around it, almost like a cigar thing, you know. And it would. The May West were different. You come down in little jerks, like so.
Is that a death?
No, but it could be a pretty bad injuries. See, this guy that broke his back on the same jump. Some guys would carry the knife on the outside, you know, they'd strap one down there. And apparently he couldn't have gone out right because when the chute opened up, some of those lines came under the knife and just held his feet up like that. And in the meantime, the chute was coming down faster. He had a May West as well, which meant it was sort of a jerky thing. You'd fall in stages, you know. And he came down and he broke his back. That was bad.
How many times did you jump at Benning?
At Benning? There were 5 jumps there. I bet something we made 28 jumps. Most of them in France with this experimental jump. When
you jumped at Benning, was there a designated field to jump in, or was it in a particular place?
No, they'd have these big fields, and they'd have, for the most part, they'd have some of them plowed, you know, so it would be a fairly soft landing.
So when you dropped and you landed on the ground at Benning, did you have to run to an assembly point and get trucked somewhere else?
Right, well, yes. But that was different. At Fort Benning, that was just training. It's when we went to North Carolina, then the jumps we made were combat-oriented. But that's when you did have to gather up your chute and get off the friggin' field and into the bushes, you know, and you just couldn't leave it behind. At Benning, you know, we'd bring in the chute, but then we just dropped them somewhere, and then you had a regular parachute team that would pack them later.
So you didn't pack your own parachute?
They only make you pack your last jump. And believe me, you are so careful. Folding everything. There's not a wrinkle in those things. And you hurry through your part. You have to do it, two of you do it, you know. You have to help each other. And you always tell the other guy to hurry, but take time on yours, you know. It was I bet some guy who ended up, he made 2 combat jumps, wounded rather badly, so they sent him back. But he kept it, and they made him a packer, a parachute packer. And I've often wanted to ask him, did we really jump with the chutes that we packed? Because that alone scared the hell out of me, you know. But and again, it focuses the mind on the thing. It was a good practice.
You learned to parachute at Benning, and then you went to Fort Bragg,
Fort Bragg. Actually, we went to Campe McComb first. They opened up a lot of camps down south, and that wasn't too far from Fort Bragg.
And you jumped there, but you had combat.
We had maneuvers then.
No
We'd have
maneuvers.
maneuvers, yeah. And we'd have exercises that we were supposed to follow up after the jump. You know.
Tell me about one of those exercises, if you can.
I'll tell you about the worst one. It was probably as bad as a combat jump. It was a night jump, and it was going to be the biggest training exercise in America that the Airborne had ever gone through. So they had planes from all over the place, and troopers who were coming in from different things. It was a night jump, and there were, I think, oh God, I wish the name of that swamp down in North Carolina. It wasn't the Okefenokee, it was another spooky name in it. Anyway, that was at nighttime. The pilots lost the direction. They missed the airdrop. We missed the airdrop by 5 miles at least. Other planes would fly in equipment bundles. They'd be at different levels. And they'd fly in an equipment bundle, but it would be coming down. Lost 11 people. Killed. Not just lost, killed. And the rest of us, it was like D-Day. We were scattered everywhere. And that was an interesting jump too. One, when you're in the plane, it's dark here, then there's sort of a grayish thing, and then you're out of the plane, and there's no stars, no starlight thing. But you look down and you see a darker black again, and you're coming down through this thing. Now they teach you that if you're coming into a tree, you cross your legs, because you don't want to straddle a branch, right? Because you're coming in with some force. If it is a bush or something low, you keep your feet in the regular position to cushion the fall and go into a roll. So coming down in that darkness and looking down, I knew there was something down there. But whether it was a tree or a bush, I didn't. So my feet would go trees, bush, trees, bush, trees, bush, trees, bush. Then I hit it, and it was like crossing. You ever hear a train cross a trestle bridge? I went shooting through these branches. Whop, 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 whop. It seemed like forever. Forever. God, that must have been a tall tree. And by this time, I'm saying bush, tree in my mind. And then the last minute I say, tree! And I cover my face and I just hurtle through this thing. And finally, in pitch dark, hit the end of the thing. And my toes just touched the ground. And then I bounced up. And I hung up there. I knew I wasn't far off the ground. But this is before these wonderful releases the British had developed, when you had to lift these clamps off and take them off. Now there I am with all my weight, including my equipment and weapons and shit like that. And you are just hanging to this thing. So I managed, I thought, I gotta get out of this damn thing. And I wasn't able to pull myself up enough. And so I could take enough weight off or tension off the leg straps that came up. So I tried it the other way. I managed to unloose them and then sort of fell forward, hoping then I would touch ground and crawl out. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't touched ground, but it was I couldn't see it. But fortunately it was there, not too far. I could land on my arms and so forth. And finally kicked my way out of that thing.
What were you, about 4 feet off the ground?
Yeah, it's about 4 feet off the ground. So then, it was strange, because you could hear moaning way off in the distance. Oh, help me, help me. You can't imagine how black it was. And suddenly, then someone called, a couple of us got together, and it was cold, Jesus, cold and damp. And so we huddled together and we somehow catch a few hours sleep, and wake up, and the fog, the mist arising from the ground. We're talking spooky stuff, Spooky. So we slowly gathered 4 here, 5 there, and check out direction that we realized we're way off. So we start heading in the general direction, and you'd come across these trees. They had not a branch of big ones, 60 feet up there, no branches it seemed except at the top. And there would be a parachute. hanging from that son of a bitch with an empty harness. You know? But there was no body behind it. You wondered, well, how the hell did the guy get down? Whatever happened to him? Really eerie. Kind of thing. We walked almost a day before we managed to get back into the thing. That was a bad time. That was not good. And I wonder if that's, I think that may be, I think I've seen references to that jump. A lot of people must have got hurt. Yeah.
So when you jumped as a combat there at Fort Bragg, did they have you assemble and act like you were in a war?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they would. They'd have exercises. But that one, they just wanted to get everyone back together and find out what the hell had happened. Right. It was so bad. It was so bad, and I never did find the results of it.
When you were in these exercises, were you shooting blanks in a gun of any sort, or just moving about?
We're just moving around. Just moving around. Sometimes we'd use blanks, but for the most part, it was responding to orders and learning different tactics and maneuver, encirclement and stuff like that, and the hand signals and things. That. Anyway, with that, and then somewhere, then, God, it was, you know, it's interesting our time. Sometimes I, for example, the first year I went down to Washington, I look back at that sometime, and I'm startled it was only a year, because so much had happened to me during this time. The same way with the service, you know. So it might have been months, it might have been, I don't know. It wasn't a year anyway.
You showed me this picture of you in your brand new uniform. What uniform did you have before that?
Oh, they were the regular khakis. You know, the olive drab ones, you know, but the winter wear. Then we had the jackets before the Eisenhower jacket. This was considered your combat outfit. This was a jump jacket. And when you graduated, they also had pants that had all these pockets in them, you know. A little place for a knife up here so you could cut yourself out of trees and so forth. And then the boots would be tucked into your pants would be tucked into your boots. So it was a very distinctive outfit. But it was a combat outfit. When this picture was taken, I was out of uniform.
What do you mean, out of uniform?
Well, I mean, if an MP had seen me, he could have picked me up and obviously that is not the correct uniform to have on when I was out in the civilian world. But yeah, all these troopers, they were so proud of being troopers, you know, and they wanted the world to know about it. So, had this wonderful thing with this. I went to a store for something, I forget what it was, and as I was going out, it was a little local store. I was going out, and a young kid coming in, maybe 7, 8. And he looked at me, and he saw the boots and the way that, "Are you a paratrooper?" I said, "Sure am, son." He said, "How many Germans you kill?" I said, "Oh, well, none." "How many Japs you kill?" I said, "Well, none." And he said, I thought you said you were a paratrooper." And he brushed me off with that scorn. Wanted to kick him. But
when you were sent to Fort Bragg, were you already assigned to a particular
that's where we joined
squad?
the 13th Airborne. We joined the 13th Airborne up there. 13th was that was one of the last airborne divisions to be created.
I mean, were you already training in a company or a platoon from?
No. We were
Benning?
we went up. We got our training, our advanced training, up there in Fort with the 13th Airborne.
Oh, I see. And that's when you were assigned
down
to?
in Fort Benning, that was just jumping.
Right.
You know.
So, I mean, were you attached to a squad that you remained with?
No, but some of the guys I'd gone through with.
Okay.
No, I never did take up the Air Force thing. But once you go through that experience with it, you know, the bond that you establish between these comrades that you've been with is so goddamn strong. You never want to leave these guys. But I subsequently had to. Some of them that I'd gone through the thing, we went up there together. To Fort. Maybe I think that was Campe McComb. It was a rather funny incident, I think, where We're standing in line. We're shoving. We're supposed to go into this office and tell the man what our specialty is. You know, whether we're infantry, artillery, or whatever the hell it is, or what we want to do. So the guy in front of me turns out he's from Quincy, Massachusetts, just up the road. And he says, "What are you going to tell him?" I says, "Infantry, that's all I know." He said, No. He said, "Tell him artillery." I said, "Why should I do that?" He said, "Why?" He said, "You know those big guns?" He said, "How do you think they get around? They get dragged by trucks. The artillery always rides in the trucks. Infantry walks." I said, "God, that makes a lot of sense." Why? I said, "Then what's your specialty?" I said, "Artillery, sir." He said, "Artillery." We go out, we're feeling very smug. And the line is still forming, going in there. We stand on the side of the road. And while we're standing there, we hear this up-to, 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 up-to. It's cadence, Summit County cadence. We look up the road, and there is a group of guys in dog harnesses pulling a big artillery piece while they're double timing down the road. I said, "Who are they?" He said, "That's the airport artillery. They don't drop trucks. They have to pull them by hand." We leap back in the line. "Terrible mistake has been made, sir. We're infantrymen." So,
Do you recall any force marches you did here in the
oh,
States?
yes, they used to have it. They'd throw them occasionally. Oh, God. This is down in Georgia. Oh, okay, it wouldn't be so hot. I think it was a 20-mile thing. And it was double time or better, you know. And people were falling down by the line, just out of it. No one was faking it. They were sick, and I forget what they call that thing when they sweat too much, dehydrated, you know. And there were two other guys and I, determined. We just plugged ahead. And we made it. In fact, we were up there at the end 10 or 15 minutes before anyone else started straggling in. But right in front of us was a Coca-Cola machine. Now, as a kid growing up, I'd never had soda pop, things like that. Was kind of and certainly not a Coke. First Coke was when I set up pins in a bowling alley. And some woman sent me down the tip. Fell in love with them then. But here with this one, and we are just dripping. Everything is wet. I had 7 of those things. They were ice cold. I think 3 of them I poured over my head. It was awful. Then maybe the other one I drank, but that was brutal. But not too many to take. There'd be shorter ones. That was the longest one.
How about your officers?
Well, that's the thing about officers, you know. Or I look back, I didn't realize at the time. Though you could suspect it. They're only a few years older than you know. They'd either been taken out of college, their second year in college or third year in college, you know. So I was fortunate that I had some good officers. And whether they would be good in combat, I don't know. But they were human beings, you know. Some of them I wouldn't say some of them. The bad ones would be at the sergeant level. There'd be a lot of guys that were suddenly given this power, you know. And they didn't know how to give an order. There are different ways of giving orders, right? Gracefully and irritatingly loyal. And so many of them do that. And they'd have this very limited idea of respect, the relationships between people. I had the wonderful thing about that. At the paratroopers, everybody was just about the same age, but every once in a while, you'd get somebody who would be 27, 29. Seemed like an old man to you, you know. And one of these guys, and I wish the hell I'd followed him up, was probably the most educated man in the company, that includes the officers. But he was a private. A guy named Charles Danrow. 6'2" or so, widow's peak, handsome son of a bitch, aristocratic looking. And he was an artist, a commercial artist, and so forth. He used to drive these poor southern sergeants right out of their mind, just by looking at them with this little smile in his face. Not a sneer, just one lip would be turned up. And they would have the feeling that he was mocking them. And they would end up, no matter how rashly they would start off, they'd end up on their tippy toes trying to shouting in at his face, damn bro. And he'd never change the expression. And of course they finally asked, why don't you become a nurse? What are you doing here in the rank, for Christ's sake? Why don't you go to officer school? He said, I don't want to be an officer. He said, I don't want to be. No, he said, I just want to be responsible for me and the friends around me. He said, that's it.
Did that thought ever trace your mind?
Hmm?
Becoming an officer ever come
Oh,
across
they used to
your mind?
urge you, And then when I first told them I was going down, they said, no, you should go to officer training school. No, I didn't. I didn't. The bond, I tell you that, and you keep hearing it about it, and the bond between people who go through certain things together, very tense, demanding things, it's very strong. These guys left me finally, It's interesting. They were built up the 13th Airborne. It's at sometime in 43, 44, I guess, after the D-Day invasion, etc. There was the big call for replacements. So, of course, they turned to the 13th. They called out almost everybody but me. I went up there. There was a couple of others, but I went up to see my colonel with a guy I liked and respected. I said, what does this mean? Can't you get me in there? He said, no. He said, we're going to reform, and you're going to be one of the cadre. You're going to be teaching. Yeah, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I was a good soldier. Everything worked against you, right? So they'd taken everybody else, and God, I remember going down to they had a railroad head right there in the base, So I dragged myself down there, my God, I was weeping like a baby. These guys were going off to war were comforting me, That's when I thought, that's when I first seriously considered AWOL. I was going to catch up with them and try and hide the thing, But it wasn't. So I never saw these guys again except once. And this is a story that I would like to record. Now, we had been alerted, when we went overseas, we were alerted 6 times. To be alerted, you would say you have a combat drop is coming up, you drew extra ammunition and you sharpened knives and maybe extra rations and so forth, and you prepared for a combat drop. And we would go out and would wait under the wings of an airplane, waiting for the go-ahead sign, And time after 6 times in a row, someone would come roaring across the tarmac in a Jeep and tell us, essentially, the jump is called off. We will not be jumping. So we'd make our way back to the barracks. When the war ended in Europe, people used to collect points, combat points and things like that. It was a strange system. They were going to send us, I think, to Japan. Because we were the only airborne unit that was combat. We hadn't seen combat except that we were all together. So when then they thought we might go through America, they would put people who had had enough points. They'd put them within us just to get you shipped home with some sort of order. And one of the guys turned out to be one of the men who had left me in that first batch, So of course, God, he was all hyped up to see a familiar face, and I was hyped up in the same way. But I was in that sort of, I was embarrassed because I had not seen combat. So he's telling me, I said, well, where's so-and-so? And he said, well, the last time I saw him, we were crossing a river. Wasn't sure even which river it was. He said, because there was just chaos and shooting, and I never saw him again, I don't know what happened. He may still be okay. So he'd be telling me these stories about different things that happened to him, And all with this battlefield humor. Talk about leading a patrol in the forest. And he and his squad step out in a glade just as a German patrol steps out on the other side. Now Sunday, everybody starts trying to get their weapons in shape, and everybody's nervous, and then there's a lot of shooting going on. And he has a carbine, the folding stock thing, which is 30 caliber. He said, well, it's awful, Ed. He said, all around my head, I can hear, bam, 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 bam. I squeeze my trigger, and he goes, pap, pap, pap. He said, very, very discouraging, he said. So he said, this German officer is trying to get his gun out of his holster. He said, I emptied my clip in him, 16 bullets. And he kept clawing at that holster, he said. And I finally had to go up and I hit him with it. I used it as a club and I had to drive him into the ground. And he was laughing at this, at the idiocy of having all these bullets that he had, and still didn't. He finally ended up as like a caveman. He tells another story, almost equally as grim. But he's laughing because it's the humorous thing. About the guy the German was building this wonderful trench, dugout, you know. He spent 3 days on it, and all this time he's under observation by this guy and this little team, and they got it all zeroed in on machine guns. And his final thing is he's coming across it, and he found this great big strong barn door, and he's carrying it. He's going to put it on the top of this thing. And of course they wait till he gets the edge of it. The guy he doesn't even aim, he just trusts his trigger, because he's already aimed. Well, the fellow falls into the thing. The door comes down, and there's his grave. Laughter, 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 laughter. I feeling guilty, say. It sounds like I missed a lot. And just like that, he changed. He grabbed my thigh and he squeezed it hard. And he hissed at me, you didn't miss an effing thing. Then he went right back to laugh again. But that, I've never forgotten that incident. You didn't miss an effing thing. No laughter there.
So what did he really mean? What did he mean?
I was saying, he recognized that I was almost apologized when I said it sounds like I missed a lot, meaning action, you know. And he was telling me, even with his laughter, that this was hell. It was hell.
I see.
You know. And the laughter wasn't, well, it was real for him. I mean, that's the only way they could deal with it.
How did you get across the ocean to France?
It was awful. It was a Liberty ship, troop ship. Went in a big convoy. God, it must have been November or something because it was gray and the North Atlantic was awful. And what's the date? It was 2 weeks to go there. There's a great big wind, you know, and ships all over the thing. And these guys would be out there playing pinochle. You ever see pinochle? I don't know how many cards. Got this huge hand of cards. And they're staying playing there in this, with this terrible wind, steadily on it. Steadily on it. So that took us about 2 weeks. We never hit, we saw the White Cliffs of Dover, and then we turned off and went into, Marseille. No, not Marseille, Marseille itself.
In LaHarve?
LaHarve, yeah.
Was D-Day over then?
What?
D-Day was over by the time you were...
D-Day was over, yeah. About 6 months behind us.
Where were you in France?
I went to, first at a place called Lucky Strike, which was a reception area in essence. It was raining. This was the same year as the Bulge, you know. And they say it was the coldest winter in 100 years or something. Well, it was. We didn't have snow, but we had rain. And of course, they were trying to keep us busy. So they come with all this gravel, we'd build gravel walks and things like that. Next morning, that disappeared. It just sunk right into the ground. Camp Lucky Strike.
How long were you there?
Oh, maybe a couple of weeks. See, I don't really remember. From there, we went to, we finally went to Arxea, France. In the, that was a little town. But it did have this big army garrison at the fort. There were no Frenchmen, and so we took over the fort.
And was there air base nearby?
Oh yeah, there was an air base. And when we jumped, we'd go out there, we'd just sit under the wing and wait for it to happen.
You remember the name of the air base?
No, probably doesn't exist anymore. One of the jumps. This is what they do. You know, you get bored, right? You're sitting over there. There is no action, right? You're sitting there, and they say, "Well, who wants to volunteer for a jump tomorrow?" Because they were going to try this thing again. They fancy a quick way of release. Go. And so I'd done that. And they gathered. We went out to this little grassy airfield. A little grassy. It might have a small thing, a I don't think held an airplane. And at one end there was a ditch, like so. And we sat under there waiting for the planes to come. It was supposed to be 3 DC-3s, they called it 347 then. These guys came flying in formation. And they were like fighter pilots. The lead guy just drops the wing, goes, whoa, comes zooming in, for landing. Puts on the brakes. They don't catch in the grass. Goes sliding across the damn field, ends up on his nose in the ditch. And of course we pulled him down again. One propeller was bent badly. So they had to call in and see if they could get a replacement propeller or a replacement plane. Well, after about an hour or so, they couldn't get either. And the one with the bent propeller was the one I was going in, right? When they did, okay, we're going to jump anyway. The pilot thinks he can handle it, Okay, so then suddenly everyone leaps in action. Sergeant shouts, get in the plane, everybody get in the plane. I suddenly have to urinate. Rush to the back of the tail and still thought of wearing my shoe, but not with the straps on it, And I urinate. And the sergeant is shouting at me, George, get your ass in here. Come on, hurry up. We got to take off. Get in here, get in here. And I turn to rush back in there, and I can't straighten up. Cannot straighten up. I said, Sergeant, something horrible has happened to me. I can't straighten up. Get your ass in here. I'll make you straight. He was just cursing me. So I dutifully, go to lumber over there and still crawl up and finally sit down, And not having any idea, I wasn't in any pain. I just knew I could not move. I could not straighten up. A little bit of panic. And then, of course, I'm trying to examine the thing. I realized that what I've done, in the nervousness bit, after I'm urinating, he's shouting at me, I managed to tie or button my jacket to my fly, which was quite a trick because the jacket button was much larger than my button. I had to cut that something to cut off, But that's why I got most of my jumps within the sort of experimental thing, because you do it almost every day. As I say, if you did it enough times, it was just sheer fun.
Did you get credit for these jumps?
Yeah, well, I don't know what credit meant.
Did you have to record in some type of book every time you jumped?
Well, they may have. I never did. Just in my mind, at 28. I thought I'd never jump again until I joined the agency, And they were teaching us. Part of the thing was, classical intelligence gathering, and then the covert action. Well, these thought we were going to drop behind the Iron Curtain and form little guerrilla bands, rolling back to Moscow.
Tell me about, did you see any wounded GIs come back from the front?
No, I did not.
How was there civilians there in France?
We didn't have, there wasn't much interaction, even in this French base that we were at. Because they had a high wall and you were only going out on, you could get past as you're supposed to be down. There's one man who I remember, he was killed there in that thing. I went out in the pass with his friend, a Mexican guy. The other man he was a mountain man. So this guy was an outdoors man. He knew how to survive in stinking weather, and he very reluctantly, or at least act that way, help the city folk. Teach them how to do something. Anyway, he and the Mexican friend went out, came back after curfew. The guard calls out to halt, They decide to run. It was stupid. The guard whips off his carbine and fires from the hip. I've heard, I'm not sure. Absolutely lucky shot. Hit this guy, killed right in the head. Killed him immediately. So the first thing I find out about this is around 12 o'clock at night. The Mexican is rushing up the stairs. Where's my rifle? Where's my rifle? I want to kill that son of a bitch. And pretty soon the whole thing. I came across it in, they used to send out a monthly or an occasional bulletin from the, the veterans groups. Talking about, they kept referring to the mutiny. It wasn't a mutiny, it was an uprising.
Well,
They wanted that guy. They'd have killed him. They'd have killed him. I probably would have been there too. But anyway, they shipped him out immediately. So we never did.
how was the food there in France, where you were at the base?
Okay. Okay, yeah, it was good. Not that. Well, they say my mother wasn't that good at cook, so maybe it wasn't so good, but it was acceptable. But the idea of I wish now I knew. Maybe France didn't have. Maybe I'd love to go to a restaurant there.
How many people do you suspect was at this base?
At this base, let's see.
Thousands upon thousands?
No. When I say a base, that's not. This was like a little fort. They call it the Caserne Vauban, and it had walls around it, and gates, and they had two 4-story buildings. Then they had a number of small ones. Yes, dear. Okay, hon.
Coffee's made.
All right. Then they had a number of small ones. So I would say maybe a battalion. I think a battalion of us.
About 500 folks.
Yeah. And it was a good enough space. They had a large parade ground.
And were they being replaced out to the airborne divisions on the front there too, or were they established?
Who are you talking about?
Remember that they pulled people out of the 13th to send to the...
Oh yeah, that was just in the States.
Oh.
They didn't do that. They know that they kept it together. They tried very hard to get us into combat. I've read some things, but they were, and some of them really would have been interesting. Well, maybe they all would have been. What am I saying? But this one was when they were trying to get the German scientists out before the Russians got there, So, and that would have been something to be proud of.
Can you remember anybody in your squad?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Can you describe who they were?
There was this other guy I was very fond of, but you're right. I think his name, I can't remember his name. But the names, no. The names, no. The one I do remember most was this wonderful captain we had. He came up through the ranks. His name was Parvis, and everyone called him Pappy. And he drank heavily, but he had a wonderful, eloquent tongue. And he was a very fair guy, because he had been a sergeant in the service, and suddenly he finds himself a captain. And we were his company, and I must say there were a lot of misfits in there, unfortunately, which he would forgive, which led to his downfall. He finally lost his company. But there were things that he could have asked of us that we would have done, And I remember this, we'd just been on this one of these field exercises, it was pretty demanding and so forth. He made sure we ended up near a pond, and because he was going to let us go swimming. But before that, he got up on a rock, and we all sat on the ground, and he turned his bars inside, just one of the boys, doesn't work that way. And he said, any problem we have, you bring him to him. Well, all of us hated our first sergeant. I remember his name, Gilbert Sharma. Well, by the time Pappy started telling us about Gilbert Sharma, the raising an orphanage and all the hard things, I'm pretty sure almost everybody was in tears about old Gil, but Gil was really mean. But then he ended up this thing, pardon me, he ended up this thing, he said, urging us to come to him with any problem he had. And he said, never forget, he said, you are mine and I am yours. And well, Jesus, here all these guys suddenly in tears here, but no one expected that. And we believe he meant it. I haven't forgotten that was 1943 or something. Still remember it. I also remember when I said we were on another field exercise, and I thought, what's the point of shaving, So I didn't shave. Maybe I had 2 or 3 days beard on it. And he suddenly noticed me, he said, Hey, George, come here. Come here. So I walked over, quite innocently, mind you. And he put his arm around me. He said, what's your first name, George? And I said, Eddie, sir. And he said, well, I got to tell you, Eddie. He said, you don't get that goddamn beard off your face in 30 minutes, he said, I'm going to have you on KP for a month. You look like a cheap imitation of Jesus Christ. Boy, I was down there. I always wonder what, see, and I didn't do it. I kicked myself for that. He apparently lived in Baltimore, which wasn't too far from, right now it's down the road. He's not dead. But I'd like to have thanked him.
The war ends in May in 1945 in Europe.
Right.
Were you disappointed that you didn't get to jump in combat?
Partly that feeling there right now. I don't feel it adequate. For example, why am I part of this? I don't have anything dramatic to tell you. Personally, I have a personal thing. So that part is there. But then one of the people I met in this reenactor made 2 combat jumps. He was with the 101st Airborne, and I guess he was not in the same company that they made the picture Band of Brothers about, but he was side by side with them. This man, after his second wound, and he jumped in a hall, he jumped in the D-Day and then in a Holland, and he gets battered twice, and bad enough that they send him home, and he ends up, packing chutes. Even he, who would seem to have a solid claim to being part of that adventure, part of that heroic thing. Even he feels guilty because he wasn't with them to the end. He wasn't at the bulge. It's interesting. That's when I suddenly realized you can't win. Somewhere along the line, if you're really honest with yourself, unless you're dead, then somehow you fail. Stupid, isn't it?
Did you go into Germany after the war?
I did not. No, because that's when we were one of the first divisions to come back. Again, because they thought they were sending us to the Far East and Japan. And I can remember where the hell I was when I heard about Japan's surrender. Well, I think it was August 15th. They were celebrating some anniversary, and I remembered. 3 o'clock in the morning on a troop train, shuttling back and forth across France. I had no idea where it was. And I woke up around 3 o'clock in the morning, and people, it was just awful scene. People sleeping in the racks, these old wooden shed, French trains, sleeping on the floor everywhere. And they're looking so miserable. And I was stiff at the board, and I knew I had to stretch. And so I picked my way carefully through all these different bodies, till I got to the outside. And I was standing on the platform, and I grabbed hold of those rails on the side, and I was just leaning in and out, slowly. And I'd look up to the right, and hear the train panting way in the distance. Look down to the left, and there was a little light that kept getting larger and larger and larger. And finally, some guy just checking out the train. He's walking along. And he gets to me, he walks right by me, didn't stop. Hardly looked at me. And he just said, Japan surrendered. Disappeared. The Japan surrendered. My God. I won't have to die. I won't have to fight in Japan. I gotta tell somebody this. They're all miserable. I open up the door and I look at all these miserable faces. They may have been asleep, but they weren't getting any rest. Their bodies are all contorted. I said, no, I'll wait till tomorrow.
These were men in your company?
Hmm?
This was men in the 13th Airborne?
Who knows? I think he was part of the train.
Oh, I see.
Part of the train crew. That's what he was looking for. He looked like he was... and this one had to be a long train, for Christ's sake. I could never see the beginning of it. And we've been on it for days, back and forth, back and forth.
When did you get shipped home? It was after that date?
Well, yeah, it was after that date. We ended up going, there was concern about, if you're going to Marseille, that meant you're going directly east to Japan. If you're at LaHarve, then you'd be going through the States. That was the original plan. Give us leave at home and then ship us over to Japan. As it turned out, that so we were on the ship, and at another time, the levels of guilt one picks up. are interesting, because I would then subsequently get letters from my friends who had been in 101st or 82nd or so forth, who were accusing me of any number of things, including the fact that I seemed to control my own life. And I was the one who was sending the whole division over through home, because they had to stay behind for a year to police the occupation. That was kind of bitter. And the only reason I can think of is because they wanted us in the Far East. Otherwise, it'd have been outrageous. Anyway, we came into New York. We were one of the first ones. And it was embarrassing. All the ships were out there. They were fire ships, the big gushers going out and signs all over the place. Welcome home, our heroes, and that sort of stuff. And in my recollection, and I believe it's true, everybody on my ship, on the thing, not anyone cheered in response.
Nobody?
They all felt ashamed. They knew those cheers, those things were not for us. They were for the heroes still back then. Or maybe I'm wrong, but that's my memory of that thing.
Did you get released to go home when you got
Well,
home?
look what they told her they would, yeah, too. When they got there. At first they said, there's going to be a big victory parade, up in New York City. That held my interest. That sounded like fun, But then by the time we got back to Campe McComb, I think it was Campe McComb, it settled it. They said, plan to change. You won't be going to the parade. You're not going to the Far East. You can go up to the office to get your papers. You're through. You're out. They tried to get me to stay on, and a lot of them do, make it a career, but nobody wanted that. Well, damn few of us did anyway.
Did you ever carry anything for luck?
Oh, well, I was as a Catholic. I was raised as a Catholic, so the St. Teresa's medal, that was the big thing.
Did you get to see any shows by famous performers?
No, I don't remember. I don't think we did.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
I'm sure it did, but you had to say because other memories and experiences have intruded upon that time. I knew I did not want to make a career of it, And it wasn't the combat. It was the peacetime. That you could only train so much. It may be different now. They have many more schools and things to send you to and so forth. That it would be boring in there. Just boring. So who wanted to waste your life that way, it seemed? Who knew how much action there was going to be in this world?
You went into the Foreign Service afterwards,
right?
With CIA. Mm-hmm. Where were you stationed with there?
Well, I was in Asia mostly. Japan, Philippines, Vietnam, and Singapore.
Did you use your parachuting expertise in that?
No. Only in the beginning when we were going through training. Because we had the parachute experience, we didn't have to go through jump school. The other ones who had not had served had to go through jump school, go through the five jumps and all, including a night jump. So we were there. We had to go through jump school, learn about getting out the door and packing the plane and that sort of stuff. But we had only made one jump to qualify.
What type of job did you have with them?
I was in operations. I was an agent handler.
I'm not sure what that is.
Well, it's someone who tries to recruit.
I see.
Agents, or takes them over from somebody else, and then manages, controls them.
So you were planning operations.
Yeah. And, it was a good life. Learning all the time.
That information, is that still restricted, or?
Well, the outfit thinks so. If I were trying to write a book, of course, it would have to be passed by the agency. And a friend of mine, about the same period, told me, hey, then we got back, and all these black lines were two secrets. In the meantime, all these books have been published about the agency, which have real secrets. Ours are so goddamn old, that they're almost historic. But anyway, that's the way. It's very problematic, whether they'd say okay or not. And with the theoretically, we're supposed to, anything we write, any speeches we make here, got to clear them with the oath.
So I shouldn't ask you any more about that.
Well, probably better. I'd probably answer you and get in deep trouble.
About your service during the war, have you ever attended any reunions from your group?
No, and I regret that. I regret that. I know when I joined the outfit, I was 17 years in Asia, and I'd be back here only for maybe 3 months at a time, get training or something. So by the time I came out, well, 25 years, 75, I guess I left the outfit. Then we moved up here a year afterwards. So I never did it. And actually, I did. I see the pictures, but I didn't want to put on a hat and march through the streets, and sometimes they do funny things and so forth. I just didn't want to be part of that. Now I regret that because I could have. It wasn't necessary to do that. That's why I'm very impressed with the reenactor thing, and I'm glad that they're doing it, and it speaks well for everybody involved in it. And yet, when Joe got me, I don't feel like a hero. I don't feel as though I deserve that attention or that respect or so forth. I'm pleased by it, but still, I don't want to capitalize. But I never joined those reenactment things because the pictures I saw, they're all wearing funny hats, and maybe I felt I was too sophisticated for that stuff, So I just didn't do it.
If you had to give advice to a high school student about the military, and from the basis of your life, what would you give them
About the military.
about the military?
Yeah. All depends on the kid. And what he liked. Now it has been so specialized that when I went in, the paratroopers were an elite corps. And that's why they had those boots were special, and the pants and the uniform was special. And the little patches. Somewhere in there realized, this is pretty expensive stuff. Look at all the pockets they've got, So they say, you wear what everyone else is wearing. I thought it was a big mistake then, because that esprit would depend upon these little things, not necessarily little, but that unique thing. Now they have all these different groups, and they give much more better training, I think, than we have. So in some way, I'd say, yes, it is a great thing. I would recommend that they do it. I hate Iraq. I hate what we've done there. I believe we were lied into that war. I believe that strongly. So I would not want the kids to get in that. But as far as the service itself, I would say you get some wonderful training. It is a great bridge from high school to maturity, to some level of maturity. You go in there and you can learn and you can serve and you can you're part of something larger than yourself. Yes, I would recommend that.
Thank you very much for your interview today, Mr. George.